Have you guys read this
Yeah.
thing yet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
OMG. So just for the listening audience, and we'll go through it and we'll talk about all the juicy details. It's extraordinary. It was so revealing on so many fronts. I texted my team today saying, is she quitting? Is Susie Wiles quitting? Like, this seems like the kind of thing you do knowing that your days were numbered and you're kind of going to burn some bridges on the way out and you don't really give an F. But she's not quitting. She tweeted an attack on the Vanity Fair article today saying, we're mission focused. We're not going to pay attention to this and that kind. But like, she talked to this guy for over a year, multiple times, double digits, I think. And there's so much. How many, Rob? 11 times. To the point where, like, now people's jaws are slack online, wondering, does she hate everyone in the administration or does she just not understand Vanity Fair? Many people I've talked to within the conservative circles think that she must have been saying these things thinking they were off the record. Now she's trying to tell the New York Times that she didn't say at least some of them, and which has forced the reporter, Chris Whipple of Vanity Fair, to provide the tape recording pieces to the New York Times showing she did say the things. So that's not the move. This guy is a respected reporter, though he works for a leftist publication. You know, she's producing the receipts, the recordings already. So don't play that game. If you said it, just stand by it. And I'll just give you what I think is the biggest. This is what I think is the biggest problem in it. All the rest is just insults, like saying JD Vance is a conspiracy theorist and has been for 10 years. Saying his conversion to MAGA and being pro-Trump was sheerly political, which she contrasted with Marco Rubio's evolution, which she credits as being sincere, right? Like, it's not great. He's the vice president. He's almost certainly going to be the Republican nominee next time around. And you've got Susie Wiles saying he's a conspiracy theorist. But I'll tell you the one that's probably the most consequential in real terms. And that is on page 18 of the 35-page article, at least the way it printed for me. And when she was talking about the Letitia James indictment, and he's pressing her on whether this is all retribution. She is saying, okay, you know, he doesn't like some of these people, et cetera. And then she says, the question is, what about Letitia James and her mortgage fraud? Answer, well, that might be the one retribution, quoting Susie Wiles. That is utterly unhelpful. And if they ever manage to reindict Tish James with a grand jury that will actually do its job because she does deserve to be reindicted, it will be promptly dismissed now with that quote because she speaks for the president. And that is effectively the president on record saying this is no more than political retribution, which as a practical matter will now doom the Letitia James criminal case. Again, it's already on life support, given the fact that they can't get a grand jury to reindict now that it's been thrown out because it didn't have a prosecutor on it who was a legitimate U.S. attorney, according to the courts. But that statement actually will have consequences. The rest is political chaos, and that's where you guys come in. What's your favorite thought or admission or takeaway on this thing?
Well, Megyn, first of all, I think this took the political world by storm this morning, in large part because Susie Wiles is known for the discipline, and this White House has been known for their incredible discipline and their lack of interest in entertaining the sort of left-wing media narrative. And so anything that showed up in that space was going to be interesting, to say the least. But from my perspective, I always do this when I'm dealing with like a New York Times or Vanity Fair or whatever. I look at something that they pulled out for a pull quote and they try to throw it in a subhead. And in this case, there was a reference to Donald Trump having the personality of an alcoholic, quote unquote. And I looked at that and I'm like, all right, before I read this article, I'm going to go down and I'm going to try to find the context that is printed in this to see if this could make, because that's not something just out of context that somebody like Susie Wiles would ever say. Mm-hmm. And then you go down and you find out that she was talking about her history of dealing with men, her father, people with alcoholism, functional.
Who was Pat Summerall of the NFL.
Exactly. Functional alcoholism, as she calls it, where she says that basically their personality is their personality. It's just much more embellished than your average person. And so Donald Trump has a much more embellished personality. And that was the context of it. It had nothing to do with alcoholism or personality.
Well, and then she actually goes on to say he operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing. Zero. Nothing.
Right.
Which also adds to it. So it's like trying to be a compliment.
Yeah.
But the pull quote is not phrased as a compliment.
So, but right there then, you have the framework for the rest of the piece, which is
Bingo.
Anything you can say and do or quote is going to be framed in the worst possible way. I saw another thing about JD Vance making a joke with the photographer about like, I'll pay you $100 if I look better than everybody else in here, 1,000 if it's Marco.
Yeah.
That's JD. That's funny. And like leftists don't understand our sense of humor apparently, or dude talk.
No, and they reported that's evidence of the tension, the tension
Exactly.
amongst the cabinet.
Right.
Like, what is an obvious joke, as is this piece.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, I mean, that's the framework that I'm working in. Now it's 35 pages or whatever. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. And you can talk a lot about whether there was wisdom in sitting down 11 times with a reporter who's capable of doing something like this or not. But I think that most of it in there, if read through the eyes of the people who know them, know the levity. They know the context of the things that are being said. Johnny, I don't know. You work with these people all the time. Like this seems like it's sort of par for the course.
Yeah, and I also think that this is the most transparent administration that we have ever had in our lifetimes. And they're not afraid of saying what it is they're doing, what it is they're thinking, because they're making such great progress. And I think that came through in the story. And there was a piece of news that they didn't push out on Twitter that caught my attention. It's when she was talking about his building of this great room off of the East Wing, and she said that that's not where it stops. And so much of the left is just losing their minds over the president, our president, who is a developer, improving the White House in a way that every administration behind him will benefit from. And as Michael Duncan points out, it's the most magnanimous thing he's ever done, because he will never get the benefit of this great construction project. But like if you
just to interject, Ashbrook, here's the quote. She says, was Wiles saying that Trump was planning more as yet undisclosed White House renovations? Quote, I'm not telling. That's pretty much all that's in there.
Well, but I love
people
it.
in a meltdown.
I love it. It's fantastic, because if you're going to have a developer who happens to be one of the best developers in the history of mankind in the White House, you might as well walk away with something even bigger and better than you had before. I mean, think if John McEnroe was the president of the United States, the tennis court would look awfully good when he was done. Okay, but I mean, like, if you're going to have a developer in the White House, I'd hope he would improve it.
And there's that
skill set.
There's that quote that societies flourish when older men plant trees whose shade they will never sit under. And that's the case with all of this that's being done at the White House. He'll never actually get to enjoy the benefits of having a secure area to hold White House events. Whoever succeeds him will.
Yeah.
There are a lot of politicians that should be getting coal in their stocking for Christmas, but Birch Gold thinks, as a smart planner, you deserve silver. That's why for every $5,000 you purchase between now and December 22nd, Birch Gold will send you an ounce of silver, which is up over 60% this year. See, smart people diversify and have a hedge. That's why you should consider Birch Gold. With the rate cuts from the Fed in 2026, the dollar could be worth less. And what happens if the AI bubble bursts? Consider letting Birch Gold Group help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And for every $5,000 you buy, you will get an ounce of silver for you or your kids. Just text MK to the number 989898 to claim your eligibility for this offer. Again, text MK to 989898 because Birch Gold's free silver with qualifying purchase promotion ends on December 22nd. Message and data rates may apply. Let me tell you, I was at an event at the vice president's residence over the weekend, a Christmas celebration, and we had to go through a tent, and it was actually quite nice. But I think a ballroom would have been even better. And we'll just do a quick word on that, because I wanted to tell you, we saw a lot of the administration figures. Doug and I went, and
Can I say one thing real quick?
had a great night in D.C.
JD, my invite was lost in the mail. Thanks for it, though.
Oh,
Okay.
It's a sore
I'll send him a
subject
note.
over here.
Sorry, guys. But I will say this. There are a lot of people there, a lot of big names there, a lot of big donors there too. And JD Vance is just in a class of one.
Yep.
I mean, he is just so at ease among the crowd, like glad handing, but also has the Bill Clinton thing that to make you feel like you're the only one who matters to him when he sees you. Like actually he's looking in your eyes and listening to what you're saying and not looking over your shoulder and like with a follow-up. So it's not like he's just going to make one comment and move on. I'm not even talking about myself. This is me watching him deal with others. He was also like that with my husband, Doug, and me. But like he is just so easy with other people, so affable, so clever, naturally clever and funny. He's got it. He's got the it factor. It's one of the many reasons why we call him 48. And I just think, you know, even in this piece, they have a quote from Marco saying, hold on, I've got it. Quote, this guy, Chris Whipple, writes, will Rubio challenge Vance for the top spot on the 2028 GOP presidential ticket? His answer, Rubio's, if JD Vance runs for president, he's going to be our nominee, and I will be one of the first people to support him.
Yeah, it's pretty definitive.
I think Marco's incredibly talented too, but he sees what I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, that's like the news. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we go.
That's the breaking story,
Yeah.
and then everyone else is just talking about this random nonsense, and you have it right there. The question that everyone has been discussing for years and will be discussing for years, and you actually have a definitive answer to it right there. And then further about JD, every time we have spent time with him, every time I have seen him, there is something to be said about an individual, because for the longest time, Americans thought that when we elect a politician, you want someone who went to Harvard and they're fourth generation Harvard and they're all credentialed. There's something to be said about an individual who has survived conditions that so many Americans have struggled and continue to struggle through. And there's a level of realism that they bring, an understanding that they bring, where it's not like, oh, you know, I sat through a sociology class which described the conditions that you may have seen in the Rust. This is someone who understands it because it's their life story.
Smug, I thought when you were talking about suffering under the conditions, you were talking about Yale. I thought that's where you were going. No, it's the poverty. Sorry, I got it. I'm back.
Wait, I want to get to a couple of the other admissions though before we like really move on from it, because there is a lot that's going to come back. First of all, a couple of words on this reporter. He writes, Charlie Kirk's assassination in September turbocharged Trump's campaign of revenge and retribution. It did?
Well, what
do you mean?
evidence?
Like Trump was doing the lawfare prior to that. Critics have compared this moment to a Reichstag fire, a modern version of Hitler's exploitation of the torching of Berlin's parliament. That Trump is using Charlie's assassination in the way Hitler used the Reichstag fire. This is unbelievable. This guy's really showing us his cards, right? So I'll give you a couple more. We talked about how he quotes her saying Trump's got sort of an alcoholic's personality. He also includes the detail that back in 2016, Trump berated her in front of a gaggle of cronies. Wiles told him, quote, it was a horrific hour plus at midnight, and I don't think I've seen him that angry since. He was ranting and raving, and I didn't know whether to argue back or whether to be stoic. What I really wanted to do was cry. And then she kind of stood him down. Like, okay, again, I'm sure these aren't like her favorite details to read in print. It is in here that she worked for DeSantis and got him elected as governor in 2018, and then he turned on her, denouncing Wiles publicly and bad-mouthing her privately. To this day, Wiles doesn't know what triggered the governor's vendetta. Quote, I think he thought I was getting too much attention, which is ironic. I don't ever seek attention, which is true of her. Right. But I mean, 11 interviews with Vanity Fair, you know, kind of cuts against the narrative. By the way, I do know she can't stand Ron DeSantis, cannot stand. Whatever he did to her burned a serious bridge, and he royally effed that up. She would be a much better a friend than foe to have. Okay, keeping going. Okay, here's more evidence of Chris Whipple's bias and, I'm sorry, but like failure to commit to facts. He's talking about the January 6th riot. The January 6th, 2021 assault on the Capitol, in which 9 people ultimately died.
Ultimately is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
So much work, John. What is that? That is so misleading.
It's Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of work being done, and that word and plenty of other descriptions, and like the one that you read about the Reichstag fire. I mean, get out of here.
I mean, just weaving Nazi propaganda in there, right? I mean, why not?
Yeah, a trans-loving furry murders Charlie Kirk, and that is the Reichstag fire.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
It's amazing the way that their head works.
Right.
You know, it's incredible.
Now here's a couple more. Let's keep going. I got more for you. She's writing about Elon. Wiles described Musk as something akin to a jacked up Nosferatu, which is like a vampire, right? Like that's like a Dracula. The challenge with Elon is keeping up with him, she told me. He's an avowed ketamine user, and he sleeps in a sleeping bag in the executive office building in the daytime, and he's an odd duck, as I think geniuses are. You know, it's not helpful, but he is his own person. Then she goes on to say that she was shocked when he eviscerated USAID. There's a long section on this. Not the way I would do it, she says. Wiles says she called Musk on the carpet. You can't just lock people out of their offices, she recalls telling him. We called up Marco and said, you've got to be in charge of USAID. And then she says, but no rational person could think the USAID process was a good one. Nobody. Now she's denying to the New York Times that she said he's an avowed ketamine user. That's the line in response to which the reporter played the audio for the New York Times. So she's ripping on Elon and then kind of denying it. Okay, then I told you what she said about Tish James. But here's a couple of other more consequential pieces. Okay, she rips on Pam Bondi. And I'm just going to be honest. She speaks for us all. She says, I think she completely whiffed on appreciating that was the very targeted group that cared about this. She's talking about the social media influencers who she invited to the White House only to embarrass them with those binders full of nothing. She completely whiffed on appreciating that was the very targeted group that cared about this. First, she gave them binders full of nothingness. And then she said that the witness list or the client list was on her desk. There is no client list, and it sure as hell was not on her desk. Then she goes on about Epstein to correct Trump. Trump has claimed, writes the author, without evidence that Bill Clinton visited Epstein's infamous private island, Little St. James, supposedly 28 times. Quote, to Susie Wiles, quote, being quoted. There is no evidence those visits happened. Quote, the president was wrong about that. And then here's the part about JD Vance. The people that really appreciated what a big deal this are Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, she said, because they lived in that world. And the vice president, who's been a conspiracy theorist for a decade. And we go from there. Okay, I mean, like, so she's called JD Vance a conspiracy theorist.
I already like JD. She doesn't need to convince me, man.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.